Hello and welcome to this Azure App Service DevOps demo. My name is Denver Britton and I'm a PM on the Azure App Service team here at Microsoft. As a Java developer working on a Tomcat business app, after migrating your enterprise Tomcat application to App Service and establishing a monitoring setup, you'll need to have some sort of DevOps workflow configured for seamless application updates and testing. Any tool or platform of your choice can be used, but today we'll be focusing on GitHub Actions as an option for creating and managing workflows for your Azure App Service application. So a quick look at the application itself. We have a basic bookstore app made using Java Tomcat and hosted with Azure App Service. This is meant to just model a standard business application with authentication, database access, and whatnot. And a quick note before we really get started here about our environment. This environment was created using the Landing Zone Accelerator, and that Landing Zone Accelerator did not have our GitHub Actions configurations built into the template that was originally deployed. But for further automation of provisioning your cloud resources, this whole configuration can be built into the Terraform, Bicep, or ARM templates that are used to automatically configure and create your app service environment here, all using Landing Zone Accelerator. So with that, let's take a look at our GitHub repo for this application. It's a pretty standard Tomcat application and repo. The important part here is that we can use any tooling needed for your app, whether you're pushing Maven packages, deploying jar files, war files, whatever you may have, GitHub Actions can do it all here with App Service. So in this demo, again, we're going to focus on building and deploying a war file for our Tomcat app. But before we can start, we just need to check one thing, and that's to enable our GitHub Actions workflows from this page. This brings us to the workflow page where we can view all of our previous workflow runs, manually kick off new ones, and take a look at each one of our workflows in detail. For this app, again, we've only got one workflow to build and deploy to App Service, but multiple workflows can be used for testing, deployment to other deployment slots on App Service, and so many other DevOps possibilities here. So let's look at our workflow. This is a simple workflow for our Tomcat application, but I'll highlight a few major components here. First of all, we're setting up our environment variables for our Java version and our Azure web app name. The web app name will need to be changed to the name of your app service, but otherwise the majority of this file can remain the same for a simple build and deployment of a war file to App Service. Moving a little deeper into our workflow file, we can see that we're deploying on pushes to our master branch and that we're building our war file using Maven for this example. For the deployment itself, you can see that we're grabbing our artifact and then deploying it to our app service using our publish profile. Now, what exactly is that publish profile? That's the secret that GitHub Actions needs to authenticate to app service and then push updates to our application. Now that we've created our workflow, let's configure our app service to use it and seamlessly deploy changes to our Tomcat app on pushes to the master branch. So looking at app service now, first we'll need to enable Basic Auth publishing credentials under configuration and then platform settings for our app service. This allows GitHub Actions to use Basic Auth to deploy. One point to keep in mind here, you cannot have the SCM do build during deployment app setting and Basic Auth enabled simultaneously. If you have that app setting, just be sure to delete it before we start moving on here. Next, we'll need to configure our application to connect to our GitHub account and specify our organization, repo, and branch to deploy from. After setting up our GitHub integration, we then need to download our publish profile to act as our secret for GitHub Actions to perform our deployments with. So now, after downloading our publish profile, let's move on to adding the secret to our GitHub repository. So switching back to our repo now, we'll need to go to our repo settings, and then to secrets and variables, and then to actions. On this page, we need to add a repository secret called Azure Web App Publish Profile that will contain the contents of our publish profile downloaded from earlier. So let's open up that publish profile and copy its contents into this repository secret. Next up, let's make a quick change to our app and trigger a workflow run. Remember, any push to master will trigger this workflow to run. So let's make a really quick and simple change, like updating the app name to say something like, welcome to online bookstore V2, for example. After making this quick change and pushing to master, our workflow will be triggered and it'll build and deploy our application to app service. Once complete, our newly updated app will be running on app service and ready for users to interact with. Using GitHub Actions with Azure App Service makes CI/CD streamlined and easy to use for any application running on the platform. Taking advantage of App Service's platform as a service architecture makes building, modifying, and running workflows for application testing and application updates easier and more useful than ever. Azure App Service with GitHub Actions generally makes it easy to deploy and scale highly available enterprise-grade code or container apps without having to worry about the infrastructure of your app while taking full advantage of the high-class DevOps tools available for seamless integration with the platform. To learn more about this and anything else GitHub Actions related with Azure App Service, to go more in-depth and explore even deeper into the integrations provided, take a look at aka.ms/appservice/GitHub Actions for more information.